Derek is pretty much the same age. My daughter Lauren. Look at this one.
Oh yeah, there you go.
The dressed up doll.
Yeah, that's creepy funny.
What is that? The creepy doll.
Really nice talking to you, Lucy. My dear mother, her middle name was Trisha Lucille, and my niece is Lucy, so I love the name.
That's very
Wow. Wow.
The elves have taken over.
Yeah.
So, anyway.
Well, nice to chat with you. Yeah.
I never saw before of my mom and I when I was tiny. This. And then this one.
Oh my God. Kyle's nephew.
I saw the pictures. And then this one, yeah, was, I have actually, this is my great grandma. There's another, like, right in that same time. She has her hand out and it's like her hand underneath the rat. That's amazing. I have no idea what that grass is about. Oh my God, I got my first.
I really like the one with the carousel. That's beautiful.
The one with?
Oh, the carousel.
Yeah, isn't that a great picture? Yeah. That's amazing. Yeah. Although that's amazing. Although I really did look like it's an amazing picture. My dad's straight from the Netherlands, and I like that. She made all the other ones. I just made the two decorations. One of them we made when we got here. I had a stack of them. I glue these fast.
Nice.
That was. That is so good. Right? I love that. Right? Isn't that funny? I think her sister crowded her out. So yeah.
How did she know the Clintons?
She was so politically involved in everything.
It looks like that one picture is probably a fundraiser for Debbie Stabenow. That's just
Well,
my guess.
yeah, Debbie's like, she was involved with the things and she was like nobody. And so when everyone was in her boyfriend with Tom and they come together and
Oh, nice.
isn't that
That's great.
yeah, it's true. And there were a couple times when we go to this campus and Debbie's mom would be in there because, and so he'd go have lunch with her mom while we were waiting for them. Oh, by the way, it's awesome. And a really interesting woman here.
Yeah.
And she'd say things like, she'd say, my daughter is so, she is just the best writer. Do you know she's like,
That is so funny.
yeah. So yeah, she was such a good.
Dylan is sweet. His babies.
He is sweet. The woman in the blue shirt there next to Dylan is a woman I work with, Susan. But the woman in the black and white who's talking was our niece. And we went to England on Saturday. She was 18 years old. And she came with us and my cousin at the time, I think was 16. He was my dad's niece. From his brother who had died. And she ultimately wound up being citizen. And I think probably so my parents, what we were doing there, my dad was doing there for sabbatical, researching European prisons. So my parents would go up and John Baxter, go to all these different European prisons, and we'd do this 18-year-old jail and 16-year-old things, and all James would just go to London and find all the girls. Janice? No, Janice lives somewhere in Florida. And so we have her house, and when she gets her disability check, and she disappears for 2 weeks until it's kind of sick. Janice is fine. So it has been for 4 years. Look, she has her breath. Oh, check out this. The last. Mom found the 90 chip on
It's awesome.
An amazing document.
Here's this other one.
Karsten.
Karsten, good to see you.
So Pam and I go way back. Sandy and my mom. And so we grew up here. How's Dan? I haven't seen Dan.
He's great. He's just, doing his thing out there.
Still under Dexter. a pretty involved football community. Lots of good resources.
Zero.
They're healthy and
I think it really improved this.
Yeah. Oh, good. So it worked out.
Yeah, they all
I'll be thanking Are you the? Okay.
nobody had a reason.
She was the law enforcement.
That's right.
Oh, she's still down in, so she lives down in. I was just thinking for the other day, because my son, who's 17 now, or somewhere, he's interested you can handle the change of administration.
Right.
I'm not wearing jeans. mentioned it. He's like, yeah, they're gonna thank you.
Sandy's family is very grateful, I know, that you're here today. come together today to celebrate and honor the life of Sandy Fortier, to share stories, to reflect, and to support one another at a time of loss. Sandy was born on April 9, 1939 in Lincoln Park, Michigan, to Robert and Pearl Fortier. She was the mother of Pam and Derek from her first marriage to Don Bilsma, and she later shared a long, adventurous marriage with Milt Chase, expanding her family to include 5 children, 9 grandchildren, and 9 great-grandchildren. After earning her master's degree in social work as a young, single mother, Sandy spent a fulfilling professional life serving her community as a psychotherapist. Over the last 40 years, Sandy and Milt lived across the Foster Road Bridge at the house on the Huron River, grateful for the nature, serenity, and, as Judy Collins just said to us, the turn of the seasons. Sandy lived a full life she often described as fortunate and beautiful. Each of us here arrives with our own unique memories of that fortunate and beautiful life. My own memories of Sandy are among the earliest I have. Sandy and my mother were neighbors in an apartment complex, pregnant at the same time with Derek and me, and they quickly became good friends. And so Cordla, my sister, who's Pam's age, and I spent many happy days at Sandy's house on Red Oak with Derek, Pam, and the family dog, Molly. One weekend, I'm not exactly sure what year it was, Sandy helped arrange a little brother swap. I stayed with Sandy and Pam, and Derek stayed at our house. I was thrilled. I loved it at Red Oak. The swinging chair, the living room seemingly carpeted in pillows, the magic forest-like backyard, the pet rats in the garage. I was a little nervous, though, about swallowing the giant vitamin that Sandy gently insisted on at every breakfast. Not to worry, though, my second big sister and future medical professional, Pam, coached me right through it. Cordla and I shared with each other recently how grateful we are for Sandy being part of our origin story here in Ann Arbor. She introduced us to Seva, the one vegetarian restaurant in town in the 70s. She showed us that in contrast to our own family habit of having a dry liverwurst sandwich on the car ride up to Lake Michigan, you could instead stop at a wooded rest stop, spread out a blanket, unpack Zingerman sandwiches, sip on fresh squeezed orange juice, and share a little bit about your feelings. But most importantly, when Cordla and I remembered being with Sandy, we remembered she was always so authentically interested in our lives. And especially in our younger and teenage years, that stood out. It was a very big deal to us. It stayed with us, and we appreciated it. Sandy's family encourages you to share your memories during the open opportunity after our first 4 speakers today. We'd love to hear how Sandy touched your life. After that, we'll hear from 4 of Sandy's and Milt's children. First, let's recall that Sandy was a grandmother who loved deeply and generously, always looking to provide a sense of magic for the younger people in her life. To honor that bond, Greg Kangas, Sandy's grandchild, will read a poem. Greg.
Sorry, I forgot the paper that I have, so I'm going to find it real quick. I'm sorry. You rubbed my feet in the NICU, for that was all that you could touch. Then when I was very small, I remembered it so much. I would place my tiny hands on yours and guide them. With every fiber of my being, every atom, every cell. How can I squish the years we shared into one poem, speech, or prose? The castle days, fancy dinners, nights where I would doze. On the foot of your bed, you'd prepare my nest, lovingly and carefully, so I would sleep my best. Forever 86, now you're the one who's sleeping. You are forever gone, but the memories I'm keeping. Thank you.
Thank you, Greg. That's beautiful. Sandy often served as a connector that brought people together, fostering a close-knit, supportive community. It was through Sandy that my mother, Hildegard, my sister, and I came to be part of an extended family that has been a cherished thread through our lives. Sandy's and my mother's friendship began over 50 years ago, and it grew through the decades of shared milestones and many celebrations. My mother is still recovering from an unexpected surgery last week and asked me to read some words in Aunt Sandy's honor. While we encouraged her to take it easy, she insisted on being here today. Can you say hi? I hope I do your words justice, Mom. I know how much Sandy meant to you. So, these are Hildegard's words. Dear friends, and family of Sandy. For me, and for many of us here today, Sandy was a very special friend and also had a big hand in bringing us together. I'm lucky to have had over half a century of friendship with Sandy. And she also introduced me to many of you, so doubly lucky. When I first met Sandy, it was summer. We were wearing bikinis and showing off huge bellies. We met at the pool of our apartment complex. We both had little girls, and we were both pregnant with boys. It turns out we had more in common, and for 50 years, we discovered and celebrated that together. Sandy loved a good party and invited me to one that introduced me to what would become an extended family. Bruce and Sarah, Lucy, Natalie, Marilyn, Miriam, Chuck, Dick, George, Bearable, and many, many more. Really too many to name. Sandy and the extended family became a defining thread in my life. Potlucks and picnics, volleyball, camping and get-togethers to discuss culture. Marilyn had a cottage on Triangle Lake. That was the first place I met all the families together with their children. I remember clearly and being surprised that everybody just did what they wanted. And when they wanted. They played whenever they wanted. Totally unstructured and relaxed. Not at all German. different sides of Sandy. Sandy was social, curious, open, charming. She was adventurous. We shared an appreciation of the elegant, and she sure did love hosting a good party. Elegant dancing parties and hot tub parties. But if I had to choose one side of Sandy to reflect on, I would say it's her generous spirit. It's hard to express exactly, but Sandy was the one I knew I could call at 2 o'clock in the morning. And I did. In fact, once it happened that her mother was visiting. So both Sandy and her mom stayed up with me late into the night, listening when I needed it. When I bought a home after my divorce, most people thought I was crazy to overextend myself. Sandy, though, she supported me so completely, it enabled me to be daring. I wasn't able to afford more than hamburger for a year, so Sandy shared her crates of my favorite wine and left them at my doorstep. When I had the crazy idea to host an elegant birthday party in a castle in Europe, Sandy was all over it. She was not only with me on it, she was in it. She was a super supporter. When I got sick, she was the friend who knew to bring me cappuccino, not chicken soup. We both knew cappuccino cures most anything. At later get-togethers at a shared cottage on Lake Michigan, for example, Sandy could be counted on to make everything more fun. She would bring linen and flowers to a picnic and insist on using glassware. She enthusiastically and extravagantly participated in a mock wedding there for Mary and her beloved dog. I'm not sure if it was Sandy's idea to have the famous floating canoe dinner on the Huron River, but it also had linens and glassware and flowers, so I'm sure she had a hand in it. Her friendship supported me throughout my life. It was amazing fun and helped me grow. I loved her deeply. She has also left a lasting legacy in the many friendships that we share in this room. My life would have been less fun and tender, and it would have been harder without her. I'm so grateful to have had her in my life, and will miss her generous, adventurous, and loving spirit. When Sandy met Milt, she didn't just find a kindred adventurer, eagerly curious about the world. She discovered the great fortune of expanding her family to include Milt's children. Later in her life, Sandy required extra care. As Sandy began requiring more care, she maintained a lifelong faith in humanity and felt fortunate to be surrounded by remarkable people. So let us hear now from Dan Chase, Milt's son, and then Eduardo Herrera, one of Sandy's caregivers and a beloved friend.
When Sandy came into my life, I was already about 19 or so. I still had fresh memories of my mother who had died a few years earlier. The Chase children were also reeling from Milt's subsequent ill-advised second marriage and divorce. So I was a little skeptical of Sandy. I didn't need a replacement mother, and I was resistant to the prospect of having another stepmother. At the time I met Sandy, I didn't have the bandwidth for anything other than a friendship based on mutual respect. And unfortunately, from the beginning, I could see that Sandy and I had some major traits in common. We were both alphas, both strong verbal communicators, and both pretty stubborn with a fondness for control. On top of that, we were both highly charged emotionally. What could possibly go wrong? To her credit, Sandy was a highly skilled listener. That was her professional skill as a therapist, her secret weapon. And the truth is that Milt and his kids probably needed some therapy. So in that sense, for the Chases, Sandy was the right person at the right time. Over many years, Milt was the beneficiary of Sandy's skills as a therapist, and so were we. As we got to know her, we discovered there were many things to admire about Sandy. Like Milt, she was an active, athletic person. She liked to windsurf and go on long walks. She even had a jacuzzi spa right in her own home. She had two very likable children, in Pam and Derek. And she showed real empathy for an adorable old dog who walked around the house with a diaper.
Watch what you say about that dog.
We love Mother. It was easy to see that Sandy was a dynamic social person. She had a wide circle of likable friends. Milt thrived in the warmth and community of Sandy's extended family. This group became an important part of Milt's life, and ours too. It was good to see our father happy again. From the beginning, it was clear that Sandy was highly aspirational too. Coming from humble beginnings as a child, she had the drive to educate herself, get credentialed, and then build a highly successful practice as a popular local therapist. Partnering enthusiastically with Milt, Sandy lived a well-rounded life. She was a loving parent and a doting grandmother. She was a ballroom dancer, a democratic activist, and she shared Milt's love of adventure, which they experienced together in travels around the world. Sandy was an intense, complex person. She was unafraid to express her positions frankly. And although she was expert in leading group conversations, she had enough wisdom and goodwill to be respectful of differing beliefs. She prided herself, in fact, on being able to find common ground with anyone, even those with whom she had wide disagreements. Sandy will always be remembered for her prolific creation of large family photo collages and numerous albums. These were huge projects. And although they sometimes seem over the top, they stand now as evidence of the priority she gave to her biological, blended, and extended family. Most importantly to me, Sandy had a ready sense of humor. She liked to laugh, and she loved to be teased. She could instantly become silly, coquettish, even bawdy, launching into various funny character voices without hesitation. And blessedly, Sandy maintained that instinct to play and laugh even in very late into her life. I'm grateful to Sandy for her generosity over the years. 35 years ago, she gave me a beautiful large cutting board made from 5 different Michigan hardwoods. It has always been part of my kitchen, and I think of her every time I prepare a meal. Because I knew that she loved deer, I bought her a decorative blue plate from Turkey featuring 3 deer at rest. Those gifts meant a lot to each of us. But more than anything else, I will always be grateful to Sandy for her care and fierce advocacy for Milt during some of his particularly difficult medical challenges. And despite the frustrations I know she felt trying to manage a headstrong engineer, I know that Sandy loved Milt. Milt remained her most important project, and she helped him develop as a person. Sandy's care for Milt was a torch also carried by Pam and Derek, in addition to others in the family. And it was Pam's skilled incorporation of several exceptional nurses and caregivers that supported Milt in his later years, and also gave Sandy loving care before and after Milt was gone. We will always be grateful to these people, many of whom are here today. I think that the best way to honor someone who has passed is to learn from them and try to incorporate some of their finest qualities into our own lives. From Sandy, I've learned that love is an active choice. It is best considered as a verb rather than a passive noun. We must actively practice our love through our deeds. Better listening might be required. A big dose of forgiveness might be required. We must continue to do the hard work of love, especially when love isn't simple or easy. From Sandy, I've learned to embrace a broader definition of family. Although having a relative through blood or marriage is an opportunity, it doesn't guarantee anything. This should not be the only form of family that we choose to build for ourselves. If we truly love and value a friend, why not make them part of our family? And perhaps last but not least, even in the midst of our hardships, think of Sandy and remember to play, to find ways to make each other laugh. Laughter lifts us up and makes everything possible. It is the gateway to joy. It is healing for our souls and those close to us. Sandy always understood the importance of that. In these ways and others, let's remember Sandy's finest qualities and carry those with us.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming here to cherish Sandy and our collective memories, experiences, and love for her. My name is Eduardo, and I used to be a caregiver for Sandy and Milt. I have so many stories to tell with my experience working there. Some hilarious, some sad, and some interesting. I was not alone taking care of Sandy and Milt. Effectively, there was always a team of staff where we all collaborated and supported one another. And I see many of you guys here today. And it feels great to see you all. Sandy used to tell me to help her remember that she lived a beautiful life and that everything was okay. Oh, damn. And I told her that almost every day I saw her to comfort and to help her remember. She was such a sweet and powerful woman who knew what she wanted and was relentless. I learned a lot from her in my time helping Sandy. I learned it was okay to take the mornings slow and to appreciate each day with some joy and peace. You know when you smell a certain smell, it might trigger a memory of a place or someone? Well, believe it or not, I made so many protein chocolate chip cinnamon waffles for Sandy and Milt, inspired by Leslie's culinary art, that I always think of them on that large house on Maple, along with Milt's combo of OJ, coffee, milk, water, morning pills, and Sandy's love for fruit, ice cream, and white macadamia nut cookies. Looking outside and seeing the beautiful Huron River water sparkle with deer gracefully eating grass. To Sandy, you were always such an inspiration and a bold person. You never gave up, and you were always so kind to everyone. I'll miss my time. Sorry, guys. I'll miss my time going on walks with you. I'll miss my time telling you good morning with breakfast in bed. And I'll especially miss your smile. I love and miss you always, Sandy.
Thank you.
Thank you, Eduardo. Because each of us carries unique memories of Sandy's spirit, the family would like to invite anyone who feels moved now to share a story or a reflection of her. If you like, please come forward, or if you prefer, just wave me over and I'll see if I can bring you the microphone. Is there anyone that'd like to share a story of how Sandy has touched their lives?
I'm gonna be lazy and sit down because I just recovered from having pneumonia for 2 weeks, so I'm just gonna sit right here. Hopefully you can hear me. So I met Sandy in 1972 in the social hall of the First Unitarian Universalist congregation after a Sunday service. She caught my eye, as you know, Sandy was very attractive. She was wearing a mini skirt and leather boots up to her knees, and then she, of course, had her long hair. And I was like, who is this very stunning person? So I certainly wanted to get to know her. So we got to know Sandy, Dawn, Pam, and Derek through church activities and other people. In that same year, I went back to graduate school for social work, and Sandy and Sarah Gibb here followed shortly. And during that time period, 4 families, the Liningers, the Cunninghams, the Billsmans, and the Bowmans, formed a potluck group, and two of the women were going to school and 2 were working. So we decided that the men should fix the dinner whenever we got together. This was very radical. So the men were in charge of the dinner, and so they did. But sometimes it was a little different. Anyway, somebody's already mentioned about the volleyball. This was very important in the summer that these families got together and played volleyball behind the Lutheran church on Liberty, and because the Cunningham's house was right there, so we had a bathroom there. That was really important. And then somebody mentioned going to the Liners cottage. And we did that, and one of the things we did one time was the kids were always complaining that there weren't enough desserts. So the adults conspired and said, we're going to have a gorgie. So we only brought desserts. There was no other food. And some kid piped up and said, where are the hot dogs? We said, no hot dogs, you just get dessert. All we did. So we had a lot of fun. We also, in 1977, Dieter and Hildegard and Dick and I bought a cottage together. We barely knew them, but we knew they loved going to lakes and camping by the sand, and so we started going around to our friends because we didn't want to buy a cottage by ourselves. So we went around and started asking our friends, and Dieter and Hildegard agreed to come look at it, and took one look at it and decided to own it with us. And we barely knew them, so we met them through Sandy. So anyway, so we had this cottage for many, many years and went up there many Labor Days, and and Memorial Days. And some of the features of the cottage were that it had a very poor septic system. And so nobody could take a shower. The kids used to wash their hair by getting buckets of gallons of water and pouring it on each other's heads. We finally put in an outdoor shower, which helped, and we finally got a decent septic system. But sometimes we had 20 or 25 people there. But Sandy was always very generous. One time I got there and the old refrigerator was falling apart and I was falling apart, and I said, I'm gonna go buy a new refrigerator. And Sandy says, I'll help, I'll give you some money for a new refrigerator. And other people did too, they just pitched in. So Sandy was always very generous like that with things. The women in our group, there were about 7 or 8 of us, we would get together and discuss things, and it was the 70s when the women group started, and so we discuss things and figure out things, and occasionally we take little trips together, and that was really nice. And on one of our trips, we decided that we wanted to understand what Bruce Gibb was talking about with all this Myers-Briggs stuff. So we organized a group for both the men and the women to get together and talk about Myers-Briggs. And of course, Bruce had insisted that all of us take the Myers-Briggs test to make sure we knew what kind of personality we were. And so we started what we called our salon group, and that went on for many years. And we had many interesting discussions about our religion, about what happened after you die. I mean, you name it, we did topics. Sandy loved to host things, as people have talked about, and gave many memorable things. But one of the things I remember about her when I was writing this up was, if you went to anything with Sandy, if you went to dinner with her, if you went to a party, if you went on a trip, she never wanted anything to end. And she said, oh, just stay a little longer. Oh, don't go yet. You know, and you'd be there till, you know, whenever, because you're trying to go home. You know, she wants you to keep staying because she never liked parties to end. And I just remembered that. I remember the time that she had a dance party in the backyard where she installed a dance floor. So she could have a summer dance party in the backyard with a wood floor. So that was great.
I was single at that time, and she hired a dance instructor. The guy who dances with me.
Okay, I forgot about that. She loved music and her hot tub, except when the hot tub wasn't working, which happened at both places. But I still remember our fun times going in the hot tub out by the river. And of course, you know, we didn't wear very much in the hot tub, and we got very, very hot, and then we'd get out and make snow angels in the snow. So that was really fun. She was always learning new things, as people said. She was very adventuresome. She introduced us to Essalon at her 50th birthday party, and she was always going to workshops and learning new things to use for her therapy and also on her friends. And with her friends. And so we learned lots of new things. Some we took in and some we just sort of nodded our head and went, that's interesting. But anyway, let's see, and somebody else mentioned this, but I think it's very important. She was always interested in what you were doing, what was happening with your children, what was happening with your grandchildren, and she always really wanted to know and listened, and that was really important. And she had a big place in my life for 54 years.
Anybody else that would like to share a story about Sandy? Remembrance?
Well, there were several women about the same age in this group that Lucy and other people have talked about. One time we were out at one of our friends' cottage, and they lived on a lake. And we came in our swimsuits. Sandy had her bikini swimsuit, and she could do it. She could do it. She looked great in her bikini, and the rest of us had these kind of woolly swimsuits on. Nothing sexy about it. So we were sitting there having our lunch at the table, and Sandy finished first, and so she got up and went out on the lake. Well, across the lake there was a bunch of these young men, and they saw this shapely woman in her bikini. They started yelling and hollering, we got a boat. They started coming across the lake, And then the rest of us got out and saw us. And the yelling and the down and the boat slowed down and turned around.
I don't feel like going into a webinar, so. So as people have said, Sandy was just incredibly curious about people. And as a young person, it was really amazing to have somebody so curious about our lives. And we'd go up to this cottage, and I remember just taking long walks with Sandy, talking for hours. And it was unusual, like the level of curiosity that she would have. I just felt really heard and seen in a way that was really important to me.
And she would tell your mom.
Yeah, right. And she also just did a lot of things to foster relationships and support young people. And one of the things she did with me is she hired me to do all kinds of things in her life. So I would like garden for her for several years. I like cooked meals and catered for different workshops that she had. And she just kind of always had like, Sandra, what do you think about doing this? And we really had an independent relationship. It wasn't just part of the extended family. It really felt like she supported me individually in a way that felt really special to me. And I think the thing that really gets me is with my second son, he was a preemie and he came 7 weeks early. And I was a mess. I was preeclamptic, and so I could only come to the hospital for short periods of time. Sandy came dozens of times to see my son. The nursing staff completely knew her, and on his last day in the hospital, she brought in food for all the nursing staff. And that's Sandy, right there. And I almost never saw her during that time because I came for just an hour, and when I was there, I had to do this kind of kangaroo care with the kid, and she was very respectfully away from that. But she didn't even like say anything about what she did. I heard about it from other people. And I will just never forget that level of care that she had for me and what an incredible person she was in that way. So I felt very loved by this person that was not in my own family. And I miss her.
Thank you.
As Sandy and Milt blended their families, Milt's children, as we've heard, experienced how Sandy expanded Milt's social circle and political activism, and joined with him in learning windsurfing and ballroom dancing. Milt's son Ron, and then daughter Leslie will share their remembrances.
To hear some of these stories, after all these years, hearing some of the insights about how you guys got together with the extended family thing, I can't get enough of that. I'd love to hear a lot more about that, but thank you for sharing some of those things. I just wanted to be really specific about me, about how Sandy affected me and our family. Dan talked about it a little bit. Our family was, in kind of rough shape back in the late 70s, and kind of my sense was that we had just our family had had a bit of an explosion when our mom died. some difficult times, and we were sort of going this way, you know, kids out, just sort of going away from each other. And when Sandy and Milt got together, you know, I think they spent a bit of time figuring out if this was going to work or not, but I think they decided pretty quickly. They were so compatible in so many ways and were such a nice fit. And once Sandy and Milt were committed to that, Sandy very pointedly started pulling us back in, and in a way that I don't think my father could have done. And I think we really needed that. We didn't do it necessarily willingly all the time, but you know, you guys, you all know her. Like, she could put a tractor beam on you and pull you from anywhere, you know, into her world, and make you feel like you were absolutely the most special person there. So she did that to me and to all of us. So it's really about gratitude for me, and thinking about all the wonderful things that she did for me and our family and everyone here. We all know what a powerful person she was, just a force of nature. There's not too many people like her. I think, so she did. She pulled us together. She loved a gathering. She somehow made you know that you needed to show up at this gathering and participate.
Somehow. Somehow let you know?
Yeah, you're coming, right? And you're going to help. And they give you a job too. That helped bring us in. And so we had a lot of those. Dan and I were kind of a bit older, so not as immersed in the sort of extended family as Leslie was, but boy, we saw it and saw what an amazing thing is. And an adult now, you see that, you know, just thinking about that kind of group that you all had together with the potlucks and the cottage and all that. It's rare, but, you know, I haven't seen much of that kind of thing in my adult life. With, you know, that sort of community amongst people, amongst adults and families. So I admire it. She was pretty good at taking you outside your comfort zone. As some have alluded to, suddenly you were talking about feelings, which you didn't want to talk about feelings when you walked in there, but by God, we were talking about feelings before you left. So that was new for us in a way. You know, we were pretty closed off in a lot of ways. So she opened up, and I know all of you have experienced that in one way or another with her. You know, other things. Talk about comfort zone. You know, as a 20-something-year-old, I found myself in a hot tub naked with my father and my sister and some other strangers I'd never met. What am I doing here? How did this happen? Oh, well, this is what we do. You know? See, like Sandy, you know, she just cast this spell of Big Sur over Maple Road. You know, it was California, it was San Francisco in our backyard. Free love. I don't know. It was. I can't imagine doing that now. We did it then. I want to mention just one thing that I became aware of that I don't think anybody's mentioned so much, is that she had a good business sense. You know, in addition to all of her many qualities, you know, she was a smart cookie with business, and I watched her develop her business and set up her practice at our house in Maple Road and do that very successfully. And, you know, watched her, you know, she wasn't doing just one-on-one, she was doing groups. And guess what? When you have a group, you can charge for everybody, you know. That's a good model. And she came up with this plan that involved me, and it was well, the business idea was to go to the Virgin Islands with a group of her clients that were willing to do it and to fund it. And they chartered 2 yachts in the Virgin Islands. One was a big one with, I think, 8 cabins for all of the clients of hers. And then she chartered a smaller yacht, like a 45-foot sailboat, for just her and Dad, and she invited me to come along, because she saw that I was kind of, I don't know, floundering around Ann Arbor, sort of failure to launch sort of thing, and she knew that I liked boats. So she organized this amazing trip, and then had the grace and the willingness to invite me, to come along. But I wasn't going to enhance their experience at all, but she did it for me. And so we did that. We went down there, and she would do therapy sessions on board this big trimaran with the group, and then we'd break off and do other things and activities and scuba diving and windsurfing, and it was amazing, and it opened my eyes up to that industry, which was kind of something that I was needing to see. And so the long and the short of that was they introduced me to another couple. Sandy introduced me to another couple that was running a different sailboat that they had chartered a couple years earlier. And this connection led to me getting a job on that yacht, traveling across the Atlantic Ocean, which I'd never done before. It was incredibly exciting for me, and started a whole career in yachting that's lasted almost 40 years now. And I don't know if that would have ever happened if she hadn't invited me down to the Virgin Islands that trip. And, gratitude, I'll forever be grateful for that. With all the stuff that she had, to think about, to organize that, and then to pull me along with that, it's just unbelievable. So, after that, I was off and running for years in different parts of the world. They would, she would, I'm sure my dad was a willing participant, but I'm sure she was the impetus. Like, let's go visit Ron. He's in Puerto Rico. We've never been to Puerto Rico. Let's check it out. So boom, they would come and see me there. They'd see me in the south of France. They saw me in South Florida. And I know many of you have had those experiences. She would make such a point to go and see people and be with you. And then when she was there, really talk to you about what you were doing and how you felt. And it's that quality, I think, Shannon, that you mentioned. She just had this amazing ability to make you feel supported, and she would just, usually when you first got together with her, she'd spend a lot of time talking about how great she was. Like, look at what you just did. You did this, you did that. So uplifting. It was amazing. And the fact that she was able to do that with so many people constantly, wherever she went, she was a positive force that way. So, yeah, I'm just grateful to have had her come into our lives for my father's sake, and give him so many wonderful years, the two of them together, to bring me a brother and sister that I'll have for the rest of my life, which has been wonderful, and many other friends that we met by association. She was an amazing person. And also, I also wanted to thank the people that have looked after her so diligently and so carefully, and my father too, over the last few years. It's been a long few years. Pam, you've been amazing in organizing all that and taking that on. And so thank you to all of you folks that are here that did that for them. And I loved her very much, and I'll miss her. I'll miss her too. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Leslie. I am Sandy's stepdaughter, one of the 5 in the family, all siblings. So Sandy came into my life when I was about 12 or 13, going on 13.
Talk a little louder, please.
Okay, sorry. Sandy came into my life when I was about 12, going on 13, after 2 years of a rocky stepmother situation following the death of my mother. And Dan alluded to that, and Ron as well. It was a rough time for us. And it may come as no surprise, I was reserved at best. best. But she brought warmth and a host of loving friends into our lives, along with a sister and a younger brother, which meant I was no longer the baby. It wasn't always easy, and we had our ups and downs. In the last 5 years, I came frequently to Ann Arbor to help however I could, and came to know Sandy in a different way. She was more vulnerable than I had ever seen her, but so brave as she tried to grapple with her treacherous mind. She still kept her sense of humor, style, and gratefulness for the life she had. Here are a few words to describe how I knew Sandy over the years. Elegant. Even on casual days, Sandy was a silk and cashmere kind of woman. She wore hardly any makeup and had a confident and natural beauty that my father certainly appreciated. Fierce. It was always good to have Sandy in your corner. Her determination and commitment in caring for those she loved were powerful, as was her networking and raising funds for social change, and especially for women in powerful positions like Hillary Clinton or Debbie Stabenow. Exacting. Quality was very important to Sandy, and she knew what she wanted. Whether in her clothes, her home, her relationship, she invested in the long-lasting, the classic, the strong. It's because of her example that I still own a purple silk suit I bought in my early 20s. She helped me appreciate fine dining and good wine, exposed me to places like the Ritz and the beauty of California's North Coast. Powerful. She didn't make a big deal out of it, but she was a big deal in her field, with clients among the who's who in Ann Arbor. She was invited to speak at national conferences and run workshops around the world as part of the Island Group. She commanded a room. Funny, I can still see vividly in my mind the face she made when telling her wide-mouthed frog story. Extravagant. When challenged with hosting a party at which she could only serve water, she served all kinds of water. Bubbly, mineral, flat, in a variety of polished crystal and glassware. Grateful. Sandy echoed her mother Pearl in appreciating how fortunate she had been, how full and beautiful a life she led. Choosing to focus not on the strife that we all inevitably face from time to time, but on all that was good. Sandy loved the outdoors in all seasons, appreciated the subtle changes and beauty of the grays and whites of the winter in Michigan, and tried to help me see it too. I remain skeptical. She valued relationships above all else. There was never a TV on or a board game out when we gathered as a family, because the interaction was what mattered to Sandy. I learned from her a tenet that I have carried forward into my life in many spheres, that we must always consider the interplay of self, other, and context. Sandy loved to travel with Milt, with friends, to visit family and friends. She and my dad came to see me in France, in Denver, in Atlanta. She facilitated several family trips, and to her beloved California, as well as the Pink Castle on Lake Michigan, and took many of her grandchildren to Washington, D.C. With Sandy's passing, a chapter in our family's life was closing. I'm a better woman for having had her in my life, and will do my best to carry forward her grace, thoughtfulness, and gratitude for life in her honor.
Thank you, Leslie.
I'm going to do my best with this. No guarantees on anything, but for the first time ever in talking to more than 2 people. I wrote something down. I don't ever do that if I give presentations, if I'm teaching things. I just wing it, and it has usually gone well, but for whatever reason, that didn't feel realistic today. So, I want to say thank you for, there's all these people here that were important to us, important to our family and to my mom, from the friends to family to caregivers, as people have mentioned, and so I just appreciate, you know, my own personal friends and our family friends and my parents' friends and our siblings' friends, so I just appreciate the fact that, you know, people are here, right, and to come out. And I think that I also want to say I'm just really grateful. I'm grateful for I look back, you know, you start to get older and you have people passing away and you start realizing your own mortality, and you kind of, and as a therapist, you know, talking to people about their lives and what that looks like. I'm very grateful for my 4 parents, which people don't ever understand what that means, but you know, that's what I had. I had 4 parents, that's how I look at it, you know. I had 5 siblings, that's how I've always looked at it, and you know, we grew up together and we're all around, and so I'm very grateful for that, and I'm grateful for how we've been able to navigate through the last several years. I also, one thing that, you know, we've talked about my mom being, different words, I guess, but tough or some version of that, fierce, but I think, you know, my mom really loved my wife, and, you know, I was going through changes in my life and kind of brought in this woman and her daughter, and the fact that, you know, my mom approved and thought she was as great as I did was meaningful, you know, and so it's this is, I don't know if this is going to make sense, but during that time in my life I was going through a lot of things, and so I had a very close relationship with a therapist that my mom had found in Chicago, and I came in one day and I said, I found my dream woman, and then she was like, oh wow, you gotta tell me about this. And I said, well, I finally found a woman with the same birthday as my mom. Which she does, and I could see her face, and she was like, oh, I don't know about that. But and I told her I was messing with her. I mean, it was the same birthday, but that's not fine. So, since throughout this whole process, I've talked to many people about my mom, and it's interesting because part of them, kind of like half the people are people who knew my mom and would tell me kind of what their impression was and what they saw, and like a lot of the same stories today. And then there was a bunch of other people that didn't know her and were, you know, they'd ask about her, they'd wonder. I think they figured if I was crafted out of something, they were wondering what that was about. So you know, so it was just interesting to kind of have these two sides, because it was like people telling me things about her and me telling other people things that I knew. And I think the couple things that came out, particularly with people who knew her, is like that, is it people who had met my mom all remembered her. Like everybody, you know, kind of, it wasn't like, oh, I think I met your mom once, or they would, you know, kind of talk about the specific situation and what the conversation was and what their experience was with that. And I think I was telling my wife, like when she was, the thing I remember is when she was in her room, you knew she was there. You knew she was at the place, and I think a lot of times people have talked about, you know, her being beautiful and elegant and those things all true. smart and driven. So I think people oftentimes are intimidated by her. I think until they, went and talked to her, and she had a very warm smile and made a special effort to make them feel comfortable and at ease and be interested in, what was going on in their lives. And I think that was the juxtaposition of those two things, which I thought was great about her. I guess there's a few things that my mom taught me, and she didn't just teach me, she showed me, I guess. And I think, so I was thinking about that, and I listed a few, and I mean, one main thing as kids for us, and I think is shared by all the people here today, was just about equality, and that we're all equal in gender and race and religion, income. Don't make us better and don't make us worse, but at the end of the day, that we were very fortunate. That we were, it was like we were so lucky that we, got to be whoever we were, or whatever we had, and I think that's something that I don't think I totally understood when I was younger, but I certainly do now. She was always talking about needing to help others, and whether as a therapist or I'm surprised this didn't come up today, but she would walk in front of the parking meter people and put quarters in so that they couldn't get tickets. So she'd see them walking down the street, and I think she actually got in trouble for it a couple times. And then there was some ordinance about paying for other people's parking. We would be constantly taking a homeless person to lunch, or be giving somebody money, or asking them what they needed. Her involvement in politics and volunteering and donating money, and there was always this idea that we needed to help other people, to impact their lives positively. Another thing she taught me was perseverance, and that life doesn't always go how you plan it or how you want it, and whether it's relationships or career or whatever, that, the thing I got from her is that when things got difficult, there's always a way through. It may not be what you thought it was going to be, but there's always a pathway, and that if you push through and you're willing to, I guess, be a little flexible about what that looks like, that's a trait that she had, and that I feel like I've gotten from her, which is fortunate, because I've needed to use that a few times. Another thing I think it was weird, I don't know that I ever thought about that, but this concept that people can change, that people have the ability to change. And I think, particularly as a therapist, I will have people ask me sometimes, do you really think people can change? And my answer has always been, I sure hope so, because otherwise I'd probably be dead, and what I do all day, every day doesn't really matter. So, but that was always, taught to me and shown to me, that we have, we all have our certain traits and qualities about us, but that this kind of idea of you are who you are didn't fit for her. She didn't buy into it, and in turn, I guess I don't either. I think when I was going through the toughest part of my life, with my mom, with actually all the people around me, but she kind of was spearheading this, that there was no question whether we could get through it or whether I would get through it. It was just like, all right, here's where we are. Now we got to go, right? We got to go do things differently. We got to go find the right people and do the right work. And so, but her not having any doubt or that confidence in that, kind of weakened or removed my doubt. So it was just the same thing, that everything can be worked through. We need to be thoughtful, learn lessons from the past, and again, this has been very important in my own life. many of you know, my mom went back to school as an older person. She became a therapist. She created a practice. I think that fortunately for me, my wife noticed that in me before I did, and basically just told me, like, look, you have to go do this. Like, you have to, you're 36, 37, whatever. I owned this recruiting company, and she recognized that I didn't love it, and kind of told me to go do that. So I never thought of it that way, but I basically, what I thought was possible, because a lot of people told me, you can't do that. You've already had a career. You're almost 40. You can't go back to school. But it was never a question. She's like, yeah, that's what you do, right? Like, I mean, it's because that's what she had done. So I think, I guess just even though I was older than all the rest of the people in that, I think I could look towards my mom to know that I could do that, and she just had taught me all these things that I didn't realize I was learning. But that became, imperative in my own life. And people mention the part about business, and the thing that a lot of people, maybe, I guess you could see that she had figured it out one way or another, that her and Mel had figured out a way to have nice things and travel and do those things. But I think that there was she just kind of had this idea that anything is possible, right? I want to have a dance in my yard, right? And then so she's like, oh, well, what you have to do is then put a dance floor on your lawn or whatever those things are, right? It's just like, she just thought it was, like, really, I put in all bold, anything is possible if you're willing to put the work in to get there. And I think a really big lesson that she taught me is that we need to do the right thing, even if it's the hard thing. Usually our instincts, they kind of guide us from what's right and wrong. And it's not that we don't really know the right choice, it's that that's really hard or uncomfortable or daunting. And, I think she gave me the gift of that, the gift of knowing that going into it. So I wasn't surprised by that. I wasn't surprised that, that sometimes the right thing is going to feel really hard, and it's going to feel really uncomfortable, and it's not going to sound very easy, and but it's still the right thing. And so that's important to do that. One thing I want to say about her is I think this was even before I switched careers. She said to me, she goes, well, here's what you do, Derek. There's a very simple plan in her mind. She's like, find something that you're super passionate about and that you're really good at. I need some water. Find something that you're very passionate about and that you're really good at, and then just go be the best. That was her. But that was followed by two other things. One is, and if you can do that, then people will pay you whatever you want to do that for them. So it sounds like it was a financial conversation, but it wasn't, because there was a second part to it, and that second part to that was, and then you can afford to help people who can't afford that, right? Essentially she was like, make a bunch of money so you can give people stuff for free, and it's not going to hurt you, right? Like that you are comfortable enough to do that. And I think that it's a big part of the way I believe about living life. It's just that in our practice, we do a large portion of our work is pro bono or sliding scale. We opened up a second office in Chicago to really just work with providing free therapy to underserved communities and these types of things. And I think just throughout our group, we have that same philosophy of just that we want to encourage people to get help, and we want to try to be helpful in that. So I guess earlier I talked about, I guess, that if my mom was there, you knew it, and I feel, and this is part where I'm probably in trouble, but you know, I feel like she's here and would just be pleased. So, love all you, I appreciate it, and I appreciate you guys all being out here.
So, I don't do this. I don't talk about my feelings, and I'm not going to, but two thoughts occurred. I think they're worth sharing. So we would order flowers for Sandy on April 9th, and one April 9th we called, "Did you get those flowers?" And she said, "Yeah, I did get those flowers." Something funny though, when the delivery person came to the door, I was walking around the home without any clothes on. The door was here, and my robe was there. And so I just decided to get down on all fours. I would just crawl across to get my robe, and she did, and as she did that, she looked up and came eye to eye. And then she ran got the robe, got the flowers, and thus a successful delivery. So I got that story. And the other thing I thought of is recently I was reading about self-confidence, and it's interesting that when we're born as babies, we have this high level of self-confidence. As a baby, you don't care what you look like, you cry, and you do everything you need to do to get your needs met. And Sandy loved babies, and you know, as I think about her life, she did have some insecurities, which you would never know about, but she somehow managed to carry the self-confidence of a newborn throughout her entire life. She would ask for what she needed. She expected her needs to be met. Even, you know, in Brookdale, she would say, they don't know who I am. I am someone, and they don't even know who I am. You know, we could tell them who I am. You know? So I just wanted to impart that, because I think that we all should carry that with us, that we are someone special, and try to carry the self-confidence every day of a newborn child. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
All right, I'm going to create a security blanket of my child. So, just to finish. Finish two of those things. One is a lot of the caregivers at Brookdale called her Queen, so they did know. And the rest of that flower story is when she went and got the flowers from the guy, and she tipped him or whatever, and he said, "Oh, also, sorry about earlier, but not really." So she did not get away with anything. So, like Derek, I also never write down crap when I'm going to talk, and I had not written down much, and then I had the advantage of being last, so I got to take notes. So, but it looks as organized as that, because if I try to write something down, I have it all written out, and then my brain says, hold my beer, and I say whatever is there. So, but I'm hoping that I can look at this stuff, and then it's going to come magically together and be something that makes sense. The one thing I started with was I wanted to make sure that there are some people that I owe my life really to over the last years. As the sibling who's been in town, despite my siblings wanting to help, trying to help, sometimes when you're the one in town and you're getting phone calls every day, there's just not much that anyone else can do who isn't physically close. So the Mom, I mean, I don't think it's a big secret that she had dementia towards the end, that a part of that, for a while, transitioned through some pretty unfortunate paranoia, a lot of fear and anxiety. And that stage meant that she was really afraid, excuse me, to be at home, overnight specifically for a while. And that manifested in 20 phone calls to me between the hours of about 5 and 8 and threatening to just walk out of the house, which, you know, in that beautiful home by the river is real scary. And just a lot of, there was just a lot. There was a lot for a while. And already, Minor was there, and I believe Eduardo was already there at that time, and already they were amazing. Already, Fungi, one of the nurses who was Kathleen Mill, was on board and enabled them to travel much longer than they would have been able to without her, because she traveled along with them. Dylan also did that, I think, a few times. Minor, I know, did that a few times. But then when the overnight stuff started, things just went off the rail for a little while. It was really unfeasible, and that's when a whole new bunch of people stepped in. Tracy, Christy, other Tracy, two Tracys. I'll let you figure out which one is who, which one is Tracy, which one is other Tracy. Caroline. I think you guys, well, even my friend's daughter, who at the time I think was 16, and we lied and told my mom she was 19 because she could pull it off. Because we were essentially just getting a babysitter, just to have a body there at night. But in addition to Eduardo and Minor, you guys saved my life, really. It was really one of the most difficult things I've ever been through. And without all of you, I don't know what I would have done. You here day to day, knowing that my mom was safe, and not just safe, but that with people who really gave a shit, with people who, not just bodies, not just showing up, but people who cared about her. It meant just everything in the world to me. And especially because at that point I was already tired. It had already been a long road. And I was trying to be present as much as possible. And sometimes I couldn't, and especially after I lost my dad, sometimes I could be physically present and sometimes I just couldn't. And Tracy Hall in particular, I dumped so much on you, I'm so sorry, about how terrible I felt that I wasn't, and Minor too, that I wasn't able to be physically present more. And both of you were so kind in just saying she's safe, she's loved, she's cared for. And knowing that let my heart feel at least okay that I wasn't physically there. It's a hard thing to let yourself off the hook on, to not be the one there. And the only reason I was able to do it at all is because of all of you. It's not just because I'm texting up here. It's I'm not that much of this era. Then once she moved to Brookdale in August, and there were some really amazing people there too. I don't know them as well. She wasn't there as long. I was, like I said, struggling to be present there. There was a nurse there, Alex, was amazing. The woman who was actually present with her when she died, which I think terrified this poor woman, but she was lovely. There was a woman there named Rain who was great. So I just needed to call people by name just because I need that for me. And one little other tie-in. The whole reason Minor came into Mom and Milt's life, and as a caregiver, was that they had struggled to find someone to help with Milt walking and stuff. Going through agencies, which was a bloody nightmare, and trying to find someone to help. And my mom called me one day and said, "Pam, the person is right under our noses. We already know him. It's Minor, Javier's son. He's been working on the property since he was 5. And I was like, "What?" She said, "You know, little Minor." And sure enough, I think, what were you, 21 when you started helping me? And, here's Milt and Minor. And she's like, he can prevent Milt from falling. Never mind that he's 2 feet shorter. It's like, he works out. And he did. They I think they walked the entire county in those first couple of years. It was amazing. And so it started out as help for Milt, and then it turned into Minor running the whole bloody house, which is no small feat. So that segues into why I needed my phone, which is that I am going to read the thing that Minor wrote, because Minor didn't think he could read it. So we're going to see if I can. I'm guessing that we're both going to be crying, but maybe not. So I call Minor my late adopted little baby brother, because he's been that much a part of their family. Like my mom and Milt, he has felt that much. Our family, but starting with Mom and Milt, he has felt that much integrated into that household for so many years. Which also, to take nothing from you, Eduardo, because you added a whole different little element. Minor, your cooking was less excellent until Eduardo showed up and gave you like a little competition, I think. You have other fabulous qualities. So this is from Minor. For 13 years, I had the privilege of working with Sandy. But more than that, I had the honor of sharing life with an amazing person. She taught me that my time has value and should never be wasted, that every day is an opportunity to grow. She also taught me that anything we set our minds to can be achieved with commitment and effort. The confidence she had in life and the way she shared it with others deeply shaped the person I am today. From her, I learned the importance of order and discipline. I'll never forget watching her organize the family photo albums with so much care and passion. Every detail mattered. Every memory had its place. That same passion was present in everything she loved, including dancing, to which she dedicated countless hours with joy and dedication. Watching her taught me to see life from a different perspective, to do things with intention, commitment, and heart. She was an incredibly kind person. From the very first day, she opened the doors of her home to me and my dad, gave us her total trust. She made me feel like part of her family, and in many ways, she became like a mother to me in this country. I will always be deeply grateful to her for giving me the opportunity to work with them, because thanks to that, I am where I am today. Her advice, her affection, and her way of seeing life. The same is true for Milt. I admire them both deeply. They were and will always be an important part of my life. I shared 13 years with them. And over time, they became more than people I worked for. They became my family as well. I find myself thinking of them every day. And someone once told me a phrase that has stayed in my heart. You only die when you are forgotten. I know that will never happen, because I will never forget them. I mean, how can I? When even her favorite ice cream is my favorite now, too. It will be served at Weber's. Thank you for everything you gave me, for everything you taught me, and for the love you always showed me. You will live on in my memories, in my actions, and the person I continue to become because of you. So, again, it's all the same words. Everybody comes to the same words. Gratitude, generosity, kindness, determination, commitment. And one thing, I think that for people who didn't know her all along, it's easy to think that she only became generous when she had a lot. You see that house and believe that she became generous because she had a lot to give, but that's not true at all. She was generous when she didn't have much. And she grew up without very much at all, and her parents were generous without much. And that came from years as a kid of hearing how rich she was in what mattered, even though they didn't have crap, like really. And that, like, people assume I grew up in that house, which I didn't. So I grew up in a pretty modest little house, but it was really impressed on Derek and I also that if you have enough money to eat out, you have enough to tip generously. If you have enough for whatever it is, then you have enough to share with somebody somehow. You always have enough to share with someone. And that has always felt really part of me. Another thing along those lines, if we ever were at a hotel, she would make a point of walking around with her 20s or more, depending on how fancy the hotel was, or sometimes less if it was a real skeezy hotel. But usually it was at least 20s, and she would find every housekeeper and hand it to them and thank them, look them in the face. A lot of times would hold their hand in her two hands and thank them for their work and hand them a $20 bill. And she would say, from the time I could remember when I was small, if we would be at a hotel, these are people who work hard and people don't thank them for what they do. So it's partly about handing them money. She said sometimes people will just leave money, but I like it better when I look at their faces and tell them thank you and then give them money. Plus that, this way no one else steals it. So, trying to put out wording. One of the things for me, first of all, I thought I was going to be real cool and I was going to get like that rolling picture thing to play on TVs. Didn't happen, but it did mean that I went through an inordinate amount of pictures getting ready for this in preparation of being cool and young, evidently. But I'm so happy I did that. And I'm so happy that the time between when she died and now was what it was, because it was a short enough time that I felt pressured to get things done. I didn't feel like I had too much time. And it was long enough that I had time to really reflect on what I was looking at. Because One of the things that happens, I think anytime with age, but especially with dementia, is you lose the memories of who the person was before. You lose, even though it's true, she did keep a lot of the same qualities. You had to look a little harder. You had to know what you were seeing, but like looking back at, looking at some of the early pictures of Mom and Mill together, it was so neat. Remembering their ridiculousness and their joy and their adventurousness was so cool. Looking at the pictures of how she was as a mom when we were little there, it was so, because you can see, I showed one of the pictures to Rick, and he said she was the same exact way with our kids when they were little. Like she was, somebody said she doesn't seem like the kind of mom who would have been down on the ground playing with you. And I said, no, she absolutely was. She was absolutely the mom down on the ground and in the sand. And she was so multifaceted. She was all of those people. And like you said, Eric, at the end of the day, I just feel so grateful for all four of my parents, same as you. And I can see so much how they all came into creating who I am. And it's also funny because I got to see, as I looked through the pictures, like if you knew my mom and my dad towards the end of their life, you would think, good Lord, how were they ever married? But when you look at the early pictures, they look both so fresh and idealistic. You can see how they were married. It's obvious, but then they just kind of, I think the 70s sort of hit them, and that changed a lot of things. But like her sense of humor, I think a lot of people didn't quite see that all the way. But Tracy was with me at Brookdale. It might have even been the last time I saw her, or the second to last. It was in the last few weeks of her life. And I was talking to her about, I was bringing up old memories, and I said, yeah, Mom was so funny when we were little. She would do this thing, and she would make that face, and she'd say, the kids are so weird, and the mother is so normal. But she'd somehow talk with that face the whole time. And as I'm telling this story, Mom is going, and she's trying to fish face it. And I'm pretty sure she had a stroke, at least one near the end there, so that was not a face that came very naturally, but she was like right on top of it. She was there for it. She was trying to get that fish face going on. And even, I think it was Milt's birthday, that she was like vamping it, showing some leg. And, you know, she was still being funny up until the end. And I had, within the last year of her life, we would have these, every now and then we get in these conversations on the phone even that were pretty profound. She'd start reflecting on things, and she would, I think she was trying to make sense of what was going on with her own mind, and trying to figure out how to put that into a meaningful structure. And I think I really felt like, and I don't know if this is meaningful to anyone else, but it was to me. I felt like towards the end, the last couple of times I saw her, that she had come to a place where she was like, well, you know, screw it. This is not really my first choice, but I guess if here's where I am, I'm going to get up and I'm going to walk and I'm going to be more present because this is my spot now. And because she was pushing herself to walk. There's this one little video clip that someone from Brookdale's son, and one of them says, well, it sure feels good to walk, doesn't it? And she said, no. I said, well, do you want to sit down? She said, no. And so I think she was there. She wanted to do it, whether it was easy or hard. She wanted to forge ahead, and like, she was like, kind of, all right, well, let's go, have at it. How many stories did we just hear about Mom and her bikini? So I had to tell my favorite bikini story, which is, she and Milt were somewhere, maybe New Zealand somewhere. Anyhow, they were out in a bay, or like kind of out towards the ocean, windsurfing, and her mast kept popping out of the windsurf board, and she put it back in, and it would pop out, and she put it back, and so she's getting like blown more and more out towards open water, which is kind of scary and dangerous. And Milt came over, and he's gonna help, and he couldn't help, and he's like, well, we need to find something to create some friction to add, to hold it in there. And so they're like, all the things available on the windsurf board, which is exactly 0. And if we only had some cloth. So, off with the bikini top, and stuffed it down into the thing, and so she comes windsurfing into the harbor, topless, at dinner time. And may have found some applause, but anyhow, she heard, like the next day, I think someone was telling this story. Were you here when that woman came in topless on the windsurf board? She's like, no. That's interesting. But, you know, she wasn't trying to make a spectacle. She just wanted to needed to get it done, but she also wasn't going to let that, you know, being shy stop her. So, and that kind of summarized it. So, yeah. Guess that's what I got. The appreciation for having the time and the distance and the whatever it is to be able to see your parents' life and look at it in its wholeness and see how she changed, how she grew, how she evolved, and also how she was the same. Like, I do think people can change, and I also think there is something about us all that we do stay ourselves. Well, wherever you go, there you are. Like, I think that's also true. I think that in a lot of ways, there is something basic in our natures that stays pretty the same, and I think her qualities of kindness, generosity, humor, toughness, I don't think those changed a lot for her. I think those were pretty consistent, and I feel really fortunate to have had her as a mom. So, that's all I got. Anyone else have anything? Huh? Oh, right, yeah, right, yes. Serving Mom's favorite ice cream and also other food at Weber's, like, shortly. As soon as we can get there, yeah. If anyone would like to join us. And I appreciate everyone who made it through the snow. Right? It's my best thing. Food at Weber's, including Mom's favorite ice cream. Please come, because otherwise we're going to have too much left.
Oh, I know the feeling. I'm dreading.
Hey, sometimes